Were you scared by the possibility of Mr. Incredible having an affair? Sound Kia was, because they said, the bit in Incredibles where Helen suspects Bob's cheating on her. This isn't scary physically, but mentally. The Incredibles is a great movie, and part of that is how much it invests you in a fictional marriage between middle-aged superheroes. So, Sound Kia, and the 24 people who liked your comment, we gotta respect that. Sorry, we forgot to introduce ourselves. My name is Isaac, and this is my editor, Angus. We work at Screen Rant, but were recently demoted for performing pagan rituals in the office parking lot. Now we run the comment response division. And today, we're looking at your answers to the question, what is the scariest moment in a non-scary movie? All right, Ryan says, in the first Toy Story when all of Andy's friends that come around for his birthday party are just clones of him. Some of the scariest moments in children's films are brought about by the limits of early computer animation. Toy Story is a great example, but the creepy, empty-looking environments in Shrek, Monsters, Inc., and Ice Age also definitely qualify. But I think Ice Age is at least trying to look ugly on purpose. Maybe? Vivian says, every scene in Pirates of the Caribbean with Davy Jones gave me nightmares as a little child, but I thought his name was Baseball, so I'd scream, baseball is coming to get me. We're sorry you were scared, Vivian, but honestly,
life is cruel.
Emil says, Cletus Cassidy's hair in Venom. The hardest I've ever laughed in a movie has to be this scene. After waiting through 10 full minutes of credits after Venom, the big post-credit scene was Woody Harrelson in a Ronald McDonald wig talking in a goofy southern accent.
There's gonna be carnage.
I know he's supposed to be Carnage, and it would be cool to see Carnage on screen, but it just felt so anticlimactic. Luckily, the joy of Woody Harrelson Carnage was not over because earlier this year, set photos were released of him on the set of Venom 2. So if that doesn't put Venom 2 at the top of your most anticipated movies list, I honestly don't know what will. Aryan says, Kung Fu Panda 2. The scene when the buffalo says Kung Fu is dead. I was 7 years old. All right, so we got the clip here.
Kung Fu is dead.
And it seems like a pretty standard expositional scene, but you never really know what's gonna scare you when you're that young. Also, while we were looking through the movie, we were reminded that Kung Fu Panda 2 completely rules. I saw it on a plane once and I was like, hey, this is really good. And I was right. Josh D says, any time in a movie when the wife comes in the front door and says, honey, I'm home. I guess that is pretty scary. You can never know for sure who they're talking to. And from this line comes the scariest subversion of them all from Batman Returns.
Oh, I forgot I'm not married.
She's not married? Can you imagine? Roblox says, when Oompa Loompas tickled my feet in the cinema is the scariest part. This may seem strange at first, but really it's just the natural extension of what theaters have been pushing for the past few years. First 3D, then smell-o-vision, then 4DX, where your chair moves around and sprays you with things. But soon enough, there will be 5D, where real Oompa Loompas come out and just tickle your feet lightly. Do you know what the scariest part of this comment is though? 3 people liked it. This happened to over 2 other people. And do you know what the second scariest part of this comment is? It never specifies which movie it was. You could be sitting there watching Lincoln Lawyer and then feel teeny little Oompa Loompa tickling your feet. Marley Fangirl says, the end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit when the Toon Guy reveals himself. This actually terrified me as a kid as well. I remember running out of the room when this would happen. There's so many scary elements to this. Judge Doom getting up after he's already been flattened by a steamroller, his red animated eyes, his helium-filled voice. I haven't seen this movie in years, but I still remember exactly how Christopher Lloyd delivers those lines. But an underrated scary element of this scene is the reveal that Doom was hunting his own kind. He's a toon, his henchmen are toons, but he can pass as a human, and he has used this to make a living out of hunting them down. That's a pretty sad, dark idea for a children's movie. Poultry Man says, for some reason the scene in School of Rock when he jumps off the stage. Yeah, we can see it. If you have some extreme empathy creepy. It's scary to imagine a movie character hurting themselves, but it's also scary to picture stage diving and no one catching you. That's just a sad place to end up in life. But if you do end up there, remember you can always pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and commit identity theft on your roommate. Mateus says, super easy, barely an inconvenience, when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man yells, "You'll get your rent
When you fix this damn door!
It's pretty scary to see Spider-Man snap like that, but this is a lot easier to understand if you've ever had to deal with a landlord. The dude says, the scene of the 7 sins eating and killing the executives in Shazam. Yeah, that was pretty extreme for what was otherwise a family-friendly movie. The design of the 7 sins in general is legitimately frightening. I think this is because DC hired a horror director to make this movie for some reason. David F. Sandberg, who directed Shazam, went viral for his terrifying short film Lights Out years ago, and followed it up with a feature film version in 2016. He then directed Annabelle and took the next natural step, a superhero movie about a kid in an adult body. And DFS isn't the first horror director to make a DC Universe film. James Wan, director of The Conjuring, Insidious, and the first Saw, made Aquaman, and honestly, he lent it a pretty distinct voice. You can especially see the horror influence in the trench sequence, which has some very scary character design. In fact, Wan and Warner Bros. Were so into the scene that they're developing a horror spin-off based only on the trench. Seems like a bizarre idea, but it feels pretty inspired to us. Adding horror elements to the DC universe might help keep it from getting stale. By contrast, director Scott Derrickson, known for horror movies like Sinister, promised his Doctor Strange sequel would be legitimately scary.
And we're gonna make the first scary MCU film.
Shortly after, he left the project due to creative differences, which led me to think that Marvel is less willing to take the same risks. Don't get me wrong, I like Marvel movies, but almost all of them have this same action comedy tone. I wouldn't mind seeing a Marvel movie that really takes a risk and feels legitimately different. Craft Cloud says, easy answer, that scene in Nacho Libre when that guy steals nacho chips. Gives me shivers every time. I'm unsure how Nacho Libre would hold up in this day and age, but I definitely loved it as a kid. As for the nachos themselves, they were stolen by Ecoleto, a skinny wrestler who I idolized as a skinny child. If he hadn't stolen the nachos, the story would never really have gotten underway. This comment also reminded me of the song I Am, which was stuck in my head for 10 years after I saw the film and will now be stuck in my head for 10 more years. Ralph says the robot dog in Wallace and Gromit, a close shave. Preston the dog is scary even before we find out he's a robot. The way he intimidates Gwendolyn is freaky even when you think he's just a regular dog. But the reveal of his robot shell and the suspenseful ways the movie unveils it is what pushes him over the edge and makes him so memorable. And now we have this very detailed comment from Zerium5555. This is a multi-part comment that thoroughly picks apart the horror in a specific moment from the movie Scooby Doo. Let's take a look. All these kids be joking. 100% correct answer is actually the scene from the first Scooby Doo movie, when Mary Jane gets thwacked in the face and the monster behind the face is revealed. Bonus point is when she pulls on her face and snaps it back into place. The electric guitar twangs as she giggles and brings herself closer to Shaggy. Literally the definition of horror, with it being about 4 layers deep in my opinion. Okay, so the first element of horror is that she's a monster. Checks out, very scary. Number 2, the second element is the horror of the reveal itself. That seems like a repetitive reason, but we'll give it to you, Zerium. The effect itself is very creepy. Number 3, the monster is cuddling into my best friend and giggling. Complete infiltration. Okay, that is pretty scary, especially if, like this comment, you are looking at things through Scooby-Doo's perspective. And finally, level 4. My best friend will literally choose the monster over yourself when you reveal the truth. This is true, and it is a scary thought. But to be fair, Scooby really botched this reveal. He starts by barking, which is normal dog stuff, but he can fully talk, so it seems like a bad strategy. Then he tells Shaggy the truth, but after receiving minor pushback, immediately calls Shaggy whipped. I'm whipped. And challenges him to a comical boxing match. He then falls in a hole. You have to think that if you were in the same situation, you'd communicate things better than Scoob. But either way, we thank you for the guide, Zarium. We had no idea Scooby Doo was this layered until today. Marcus says, the truck driver lady in Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. OMG, this was a popular answer, but we're not really familiar with this scene. We'll have to check it out later, I guess. GLC Virus says, Screen Rant the movie, the scene where he shows his face. No offense. Now I know some of you think that you've seen my real face, but in fact, this isn't my real face.
This is Happy Halloween!
And that's our very spooky episode for this week. Check out the community tab on the Screen Rant channel page if you'd like to answer one of our questions, or leave a comment below. And click here to watch more comment response division episodes. And as always, subscribe to Screen Rant, and if you've watched this far in the video, give yourself a big pat on the back and comment down below. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.